is that there was a higher percentage of injury reports associated with suicidality and self-harm for two-spirit, trans, non-binary and gender-diverse children and youth through receiving government services compared to their cis male and cis female counterparts.
The call comes after a report released today finding two-spirit and gender-diverse kids receiving government services are not always being properly supported. It suggests more needs to be done to ensure the children's right to determine their own identity and access safe and timely gender-affirming care. It also finds support workers lack knowledge about gender diversity and can be disrespectful. The City of Vancouver's new office in Chinatown is set to open in July, and if approved by Council, it will be named in honor of Juan Alexander Camiao.
Juan Alexander was a leader and a trailblazer. Through decades of persecution, his determination never wavered, and his dedication continues to be felt today.
Camiao is the first known person of Chinese descent born in present-day Canada and was a prominent leader in Vancouver's Chinese community in the early to mid-1900s. The office is part of the city's efforts to revitalize historic Chinatown. Well, today felt like the real first day of summer, Joe.
Yeah, it was like yesterday wasn't really the solstice.
Yeah.
We went from gray and cool to downright hot. Take a look at the humidex values right now across the south coast. It feels like 23 at YVR earlier today, feeling like 26. It feels like the high 20s as we head out towards the Fraser Valley. So a bit of mugginess out there as well. And a little bit of a fuel for a few thunderstorms tracking east to west. A lot of thunderstorm activity in the interior, but I wanted to show you this cell between Hope and Abbotsford. I don't think it'll continue to survive its journey westward, but we are seeing some lightning strikes right now if you are headed east of Abbotsford. The real activity, though, up towards the Peace, that's where we do have thunderstorm watches in place right now. So some of those storms may push severe limits. So we are still seeing activity across parts of the interior today. I know it was a cloudy one for the Okanagan, few more showers in through central BC. That ridge of high pressure is slowly changing the story for everyone to hot and dry. And tomorrow, watch as I take you through the highs, we'll really notice that heat in the interior. So high 20s on tap for the southern interior, and it'll feel like the high 20s here on the south coast, even warmer and hotter than today, Anita. And I'll take you through the stretch, because it is a stretch, coming up in a bit.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A difficult day for the families of the 5 people aboard the Titan tourist sub. Parts of the lost submersible found strewn on the bottom of the ocean. The full story, and we speak to a submarine expert live from the Lower Mainland next. Peguis First Nations boxing coach Vernon Cook says the sport changed his life. Now he's passing his skills and passion onto the next generation of Indigenous fighters. Cook hopes it'll keep youth busy and help them make the good life choices.
My name is Vernon Cook. I'm the head boxing coach of the Red Warriors Boxing Club here in Peguis, Manitoba, and I've been coaching here for the past 6 years. I lived in the West End, and there was a corner store. Future coach, he was actually at a sub store, so I kept going there for sandwiches, and he asked me, hey, you look pretty big, would you want to try boxing? I said, sure, why not? In the early, mid-90s, there was a lot of gangs in Winnipeg, and that kept me out of trouble a lot. 1, 2 hook. A former partner of mine, nephew, committed suicide, and it really hit me hard, so I think, what can I do for my community to help out? I was walking these halls and I heard a noise coming from a room, and then I looked in there. There were some boxing bags there and some kids playing with it. And I was like, dawned on me, boxing, let's do this. And that's how it started. Bear Brothers, wow, they're something else. They're hard workers. They dedicate themselves to the sport. They respect it, they take it in, they're the perfect students.
I didn't even know anything about boxing there. And then my auntie Rhonda told me there were some boxing classes going there. I really liked it, and I kept on going every day, like every single day. I stood really dedicated to it.
It helps me take a lot of stress and anger out here. Yeah, every time I come here and train really hard, yeah, it makes me clear my mind and everything. Yeah, every time I come home, I just reset my mind. Yeah, I feel really good.
I learned actually quite a bit about myself. Like I learned how to like control myself and that, and learn how to think. It's actually like a mind game too, like boxing. Like learns how to get strong in your mind and that.
I believe it kept them out of trouble and kept them striving for something else. And you see a lot of hard work they're doing. It could go either way, you know. They chose the right path, and I always let them know it's all about choices.
About the boxing gym, I'll probably be just a normal kid laying at home or something. It got me really motivated. I was really kind of like, you know, wasn't as motivated as before, but now I'm like on an everyday goal. Can really inspire kids to like join boxing and that, yeah.
Just the feeling, knowing that I'm helping people, doing good. That's what I want to do, is to give back to my community. And that feeling just keeps me going. Like the Bear Brothers, they're making me proud. But I make sure what they can find from boxing is like what they can take out of it and apply to themselves later on in life. What I know is like my kindness and teachings will live long way past what I'm gone. So that's my goal.
A frantic international search that gripped people around the world has come to an end. The Titan submersible, which was lost with 5 crew members, has been found destroyed at the bottom of the sea. As Kayla Hounsell reports, the search has now turned to figuring out what happened and remembering the crew.
This is the remotely operated vehicle that put an end to the race against time. The Odysseus 6K found debris on the ocean floor, ending a 3-day multinational search to find 5 people missing in a capsule designed to plunge into the depths.
The debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel.
The U.S. Coast Guard says it found 5 major pieces of the Titan. It doesn't know when the sub imploded, but it lost contact with its mother ship an hour and 45 minutes after it began its dive to the Titanic wreck Sunday morning. The Coast Guard was notified 8 hours later.
We've had sonar buoys in the water nearly continuously and have not detected any catastrophic events when those sonar buoys have been in the water.
And those banging sounds picked up by a Canadian aircraft providing hope of life, now thought to have no connection to the debris field. The company that owns the Titan says it believes all souls on board were killed.
PH is a wonderful man, very upbeat. He's a good friend.
For Larry Daly, all of this is personal. He dove the Titanic himself 20 years ago. His mentor was on board the Titan, French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet, known as Mr. Titanic.
He's more knowledge in this field than anyone I know. He's been there, done it all. He's probably got more T-shirts in his closet than anybody.
A 2017 interview makes it clear Nargeolet was clearly aware of the risks.
Stuck on the bottom, you can survive for a while because you can stay about 4 or 5 days on the bottom, which not help very much. Because if nobody can help you.
British billionaire Hamish Harding had flown to space and visited the South Pole.
He's the quintessential British explorer. He's very much an Englishman. He is very outgoing, very friendly, very personable.
We need to look at the perspective of women first, not just men.
Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood, seen here speaking at the United Nations, took the trip with his son, Suleiman, just 19.
We have our control screen here.
and Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, which owns the Titan. In 2018, dozens of scientists penned a letter to Rush outlining safety concerns with his experimental approach. The man behind it all, now a victim of his own creation.
That's CBC's Kayla Hounsell reporting tonight. For more on this story and its unfortunate, tragic conclusion, we're joined by Don Muth, Senior Technical Advisor at International Submarine Engineering Limited in Port Coquitlam. Can you tell us what's going through your head today in light of the revelations that the sub imploded near the Titanic?
Some of the things that are going through my head is, obviously the real tragedy it is from a personal standpoint for the people and their families. It's a horrible tragedy. And the importance of life safety and design. It seems to be that there was some sort of a design or testing failure. Still not fully known, of course, until if they get all the pieces up so you can actually do a little bit of an audit and what it failed by. But it certainly was a very experimental system that, it's certainly not something that you would normally see with a submersible.
Yeah, and given all that, and certain details really resonating with the public, whether it's the fact that the sub was controlled by a game controller or that the company was operating without classification. I know it's still early, but given what you said, what is the industry able to take away from all of this?
Well, I think for the industry is extremely safe overall because most of them are classified, which means they're gone through an independent assessment of all the design, the testing, and that's what classification does for you. It really makes sure that people are going to be safe and are going to live, which is perhaps the most critical thing. It's not just a piece of equipment. There's people's lives at stake.
And we won't get into all of, the issues around classification. I know it's complicated, but this is all also happening in international waters. So there's really no stopping another company from doing this, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think this kind of tourism excursion should continue to happen?
Well, at this moment, there's no stopping it as long as they don't touch the Titanic and they just observe. There's certainly some motion to actually get it so that they could have to permit people, which would allow them to make sure that these submersibles are safe. But even with the best safe ones, bad things can happen. And people are explorers and want to see things themselves. And, it's a bit of a human condition. So to stop people from doing that, it's probably not really that possible to do that at this time.
But do you think that it should continue to happen, personally?
Personally, with the right equipment and safe, people have a choice of what they do with their life. I believe that people have a free choice. There's certain things I wouldn't do. I wouldn't, dive out of a plane with a parachute for fun. But people do choose to do that. And I wouldn't have gone in that submarine because I wouldn't have felt it safe enough. But, people do all sorts of bad decisions, in my opinion, regularly.
Don Muth, thank you so much for joining us live today.
Thank you.
It was a day of pomp and circumstance in Washington, D.C. as Joe Biden welcomed the Prime Minister of India. But that friendly visit wasn't without hiccups. That story is next.
Highway 99 North is best known as the road to Whistler through Squamish, and little else to both locals and travelers. Most tourists take the Britannia up Howe Sound to Squamish, and they all seem to know about the Royal Hudson Steam Train. though in many ways Squamish has been regarded as the end of the line, and recently the town of 12,000 has been hard hit. The local pulp mill became strike-bound 2 weeks ago, with others in the province. Then the local sawmill went down with nowhere to sell its wood chips. 1 in 4 breadwinners was out of work. Then came the tourists in droves. They have single-handedly boosted a sagging economy. This is the reason for the tourist boom. International travelers are being told about the new Coast Mountain Circle route, and they're heading north.
We didn't realize that 99 went through, and we thought we were going to have to turn around, go through Vancouver, and go back down south. But we realize now that we can go through and continue on our vacation, the northern part.
So that's the route you're going to go?
Yes.
See some of the Wild West?
We hope so. We hope so.
Taking May 1991 and comparing it to May 1992, we're up well over 100%. And when the tourists come in and get the information from it, most of them are coming over the Coast Mountain Circle route. If there's ever such a thing as a good time for a strike, especially one that affects so many people, I think that we're very fortunate it's happening during this time when we're seeing such a huge influx of tourists into the area and, of course, going into our local businesses.
The route to Vancouver used to be westerly over the Trans-Canada Highway. Few ventured north because of an infamous unpaved section of mountain road known as the Duffy Lake section. Now that has all changed with the new Duffy Lake Road opening last fall. The road that takes its name from Duffy Lake used to be one of the most challenging in the province. It was very much like this, dirt and gravel and potholes everywhere. It used to rattle vehicles almost to death when they traveled it. These days, it's a modern 2-lane highway, fully paved, and it affords motorists and travelers a look at some of the best scenery anywhere. Lillooet was once generally regarded as in the middle of nowhere because it was on the other side of the treacherous unpaved Duffy Lake Road. Some nights the town is jammed and it's hard to get a motel room, making business owners very pleased.
Where they used to go down the Fraser Canyon or through the Coquihalla, now they have this, I would say, glorious route down to the coast. And it is. If you've been on that, you know what I'm talking about.
And they're stopping at places like the Sheep Pasture Golf Course.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. You can't find a golf course like this anywhere else in Canada.
Where if you hit a sheep, you got to take it?
Only if you kill it.
Alan Edwards, CBC News, Lillooet.
Authorities in Manitoba have released the names of the 16 people killed in a highway crash a week ago. Family members brought photographs of their loved ones to the media conference. Most of the people who died were in their 80s. The youngest was 68. They were on a bus when it collided with a transport truck near Carberry, about 160 kilometers north of Winnipeg. 9 people are still in hospital, 4 in critical care. Well, the U.S. president rolled out the red carpet today for India's prime minister. India is now considered the world's most populous nation, and it plays a key role in global politics. But as Salima Shivji tells us, some U.S. lawmakers oppose aspects of Prime Minister Modi's leadership.
A very warm welcome as the U.S. president plays host to India's Narendra Modi.
Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister. Welcome back to the White House.
In front of a boisterous crowd some 7,000 strong. Pomp typically reserved for the closest of allies, a surefire sign for many that the U.S. sees India as an indispensable friend.
God bless America.
There's unprecedented trust between the two leaders, Modi said ahead of the visit. They also need each other badly, experts say, to counter an aggressive China in the Indo-Pacific.
It is very important that
the trip is a defining moment for an India rising on the global stage, says this Mumbai-based foreign policy expert.
And you've got the United States once again really holding out its hand and saying the most important country in the world wants to be your friend, and here is a hand of friendship. We're going to give you whatever we know you need in terms of defense.
The two countries signed deals promising that India will buy armed U.S. drones and both will build American fighter jet engines in India. This state visit is a historic one. Modi is in select company, one of the few foreign leaders invited to address Congress twice.
I extend my deepest gratitude.
But several members of Congress skipped the speech in protest over the Indian government's treatment of its Muslim minority, the erosion of democratic rights and press freedoms in Modi's India, a complication that Biden has to contend with as he woos his new friend.
One grounded on democracy.
The president alluded to it in the Oval Office and was asked point blank by reporters.
The Prime Minister and I had a good discussion about democratic values. That's the nature of our relationship. We're straightforward with each other.
The same question to Prime Minister Modi, who brushed off any criticism over how his government treats minorities, saying there's no question of discrimination. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Helping each other heal from residential school and sharing their love with children and community. This Lac-Willems couple shares their story coming up.
Montreal used to be known as a renter's paradise. Now, I've got bad news for you. The housing crisis is likely to get worse before it gets better. So how did we get here? Well, let's explain it as supply and demand, starting with vacancy rates. This line shows the average vacancy rate, or the percentage of available apartments in Montreal. The lower it is, the harder it is to find an apartment. Montreal is seeing a low vacancy rate, around 2%, and those available tend to be newer and more expensive units. Meanwhile, this is rent for a 2-bedroom in Montreal, and last year, this line saw its biggest jump in 20 years. The CMHC projects that if more units aren't built, rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Montreal could go up 30% within 2 years. That could tighten the gap between Montreal and larger cities like Toronto or even Vancouver, where a 2-bedroom apartment rents for $2,000 a month. So there's just not enough apartments for a growing demand, as migration to cities like Montreal has returned to pre-pandemic levels. But that's not the only reason why your rent is going up.
An increasingly large share of Canadian rental housing is owned by larger financial operations.
Investors have accounted for 20% of sales, while first-time homebuyers have only accounted for half since 2014. The average detached single-family home in Montreal costs more than $600,000. For most renters trying to become buyers, that's just simply out of reach, especially after a full year of interest rate hikes. It's not only putting pressure on home buyers, those hikes have cooled the construction of new housing, which was down 25% in Montreal last year. That may be why Quebec is set to fall significantly short of its target for new housing units this year. So what can be done, and where do we go from here?
In the long term, it is absolutely clear that we need a lot more housing than we currently have. In the meantime, what we need is policies that make it more viable to be a renter on a relatively low income.
He's talking about rent control and social housing that's based on income rather than market price. Because put simply, the market is eating up affordable units and it's unclear when, or even if, the market will correct itself.
Time now to check in with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff, who has some news about the long stretch of sunshine we're going to get.
Yes, I know it's nice to think about the summer weather returning after a taste of January, but we will have to watch for obviously things like building fire danger and our continued drought, but things are shifting as we head into a new ridge of high pressure. So I want to take you to the West Coast in a moment, but I just want to take you to the other side of the country. I am watching a tropical storm in the Atlantic tonight. Tropical storm Brett just crossing the Lesser Antilles. Barbados about to get hit with some strong winds. It's a little early to see the second named storm of the season in the Atlantic. Atlantic sea surface temperatures are running well above average, just as parts of the Pacific are. Okay, taking you back to the Pacific. So we are watching for that building heat and that long dry stretch. So I want to show you the last of the rain over the next couple of days. We still have some unsettled weather to get through, particularly for the Peace, where we do have thunderstorm watches in place today, and a moderate risk of seeing those storms again there tomorrow. Isolated showers popping up across the interior. So we are still looking at, over the next couple of days, a solid 10 to 20 millimeters. We will take everything we can get before that ridge pushes in for early next week. So really the unsettled weather lasting through the weekend. It's Monday that I think we're going to say goodbye to any significant rain for the long haul. 15 in towards Prince Rupert tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. You'll really notice that warm up for Prince George. Again, thunderstorm risk towards the northeast. 28 in Kelowna. I know the sunshine will be nice after the day of cloud today. Okay, that's quite the forecast for Metro Vancouver. There is that rogue shower a few models are trying to put in for Saturday morning, but at this point, it does look mainly dry for the long haul. So 24 tomorrow. It will feel substantially warmer for your Friday than it did today. And today was a warm one. We may even break a few temperature records across Metro Vancouver tomorrow with a bit of a humidex. Then temperatures will come down back to seasonal for the weekend. Enter a few more clouds. That'll keep those afternoon highs down. Overnight lows back up around 15. I know the past few mornings have been fresh. Those overnights have been cool. But Anita, we're back to the other side of summer. It's coming.
Yeah, but this doesn't look too bad. It looks safe enough, hopefully.
You're right. No 30s yet.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, yesterday we showed you the first half of Love Knows No Tribe, a documentary about an elder couple from the Lac-Willems Nation. Tonight, they share their experience with residential school and the work they did to preserve their culture for their children. Take a look.
So I was there 3 years and I did come home and from the hospital. Then I have a whole year of transition. But then we got married in 52. And
7 years after the Second World War ended.
we had my eldest son, Art, that same year. And like he said, we wanted more, a bigger family. But it took 5 years before Peter came along, and that was it. So through the years, it was okay. Then 20 years into our marriage is when I found out about Leonard's experience at the residential school. He didn't mention anything. It was like a puzzle that was some parts missing in his life. So when he stood up in Civic Center at a conference, he told his story. That's the first time I heard it.
I was in Miller Bay first. And then I stayed in Miller Bay. Then they sent me down to Alberni. I liked Alberni. It was a beautiful place. Nice lake. But there was a lot of pedophiles in our school. For the second week I was there, and one of these guys came in take the kid that was laying next to me, next bed. Then he came back crying. I didn't know why, but I soon found out. A lot of pedophiles in that school.
I sat there like different colors of rainbow. My emotions. I was crying so hard for this little boy that went through all that experience. This is when we found out, and then I had Art and Peter come together, and we talked to him. I told the children not everything, but that he needed our help, that we have to help him. And he went in a deep spin after that, after opening up. His life just went out, just so much hurt in him. It wasn't until my mother and I had gone to church every Sunday, and he drops us off, and he wouldn't come in. He had this thing against the churches. But he dropped us off. Then finally he came. And then his life sort of changed after that.
Up until that point in his life, in a better part of my life, he really struggled with the after effects of residential school. He became an alcoholic. He became a deep alcoholic, would hide his drinks everywhere, would self-medicate on his own. And for the longest time, we didn't understand why he was going through all this all the time. And it wasn't until when he stood up in the Civic Center and talked about his experience in residential school that we finally understand. I can attest that it just doesn't stop with Dad. It runs in the family, intergenerational. So our whole family, because of the residential school, really struggled to keep together. And it was because of Mom that helped us keep together. And when he turned his life around, he was a very, very good person. He was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of drinker because of residential school. He'd be very sweet as a dad one day, and the next moment he could be somebody totally different because he was fighting those demons inside.
Down, where was this lady telling her story?
In the Civic Center.
Oh yeah, Civic Center. Hey, I said to myself, she's telling my story. At residential school, all the pedophiles. It was just but with God's help, like we're very religious family, my wife and I.
You know, at the time he opened up at the Civic Center, there was no counselors at that time, not one. He broke down and the others broke down. So I also had to learn how to handle this. It was very difficult. So we really struggled because we had no counseling.
And he did end up taking the church and Canada to court. There was about 8 of them altogether, and they won because of his testimony and those of the small group of men that came forward for everybody. He endured, again, their endless questions. There were many lawyers on their side and only one on Dad's side. He was the one that changed everything. He was the one that got Prime Minister Stephen Harper to stand up in Parliament. It was him and that other group that came forward at the very beginning. So what he got out of all that is just nothing. It's just peanuts to them. But it did change the whole system, the school system, the judicial system. And that's not the first change that Dad brought into Canada. He was also there for to help put together the first all-native basketball tournament. It's going on for 70 years now, or 60.
No, it was in 1960, so 63 years old now.
63. He was also there for responsible for the first Friendship Center in Canada, which is now Canada-wide. And he was the one that paid the city $1 to buy a piece of land to start to buy a building to start the Friendship Center in Canada.
You guys have lived in Rupert probably for longer than anywhere else, I imagine?
Yeah, 57. You were about a month old.
Yeah.
57 up to 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
And then you guys went down to Richmond for a while?
7
And now
years.
here you are.
Complete
in
circle.
Lac-Ouellam's complete circle. Talk about that. Well, your journey making it back to Lac-Ouellam's and how you feel being back in Lac-Ouellam's.
Well, for both of them to decide to come home, I had a lot of thoughts about that, but I'm slowly getting to know what's going on here, and I really like it. I love the pool. We go every day, and I do a lot of craft work with the clinic. I find that without the clinic and the pool staff, there's really not much. But we're at the point now also where we're slowing down, so I like it.
Okay.
I don't know about these guys.
And you love the pool, right, Leonard? You love the swimming pool.
Oh, love it.
And now, how long has it been then, if we look at that? You just, what anniversary?
It would be 71 this July.
71 years. Do you think it'd go that long, Len?
Yeah, the people said you can't marry same tribe. I don't get love has no tribe.
Just like the title, Love Has No Tribe, hosted by Rudy Kelly. You can hear more from him on the Herb Originals podcast, available on the CBC Listen app. An American hiker was all set to tackle the West Coast Trail until the airline lost his gear. Wasn't the end of his story, though. Coming up, how a group of BCers came through when he needed it most.
I really like Cinerama because of its high technology. It was way ahead of its time. Welcome to my Cinerama Theater. I saw Cinerama first time when I was in Toronto, 16 years old. I went to the Eglinton Theatre, and they ran Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. I came out of there entranced. I was shaking my head saying, now what are they going to do? They've done it all. Are they going to make another movie? Brothers Grimm was filmed on location in Germany. It was like being in Germany for 3 hours. The sound was all around you. The picture was wrapped around you. Full color, never saw that before. Over the internet, I encountered Cinerama fans around the world. In the United States, a colleague of mine, he had access to Cinerama negatives. So we started cleaning them up and eventually restoring them into better than original quality. Warner Brothers provided digital scans of the negatives for us. To restore this film, we spent hours and hours. I probably worked 12 to 18 hours a day at times. I started doing this project in 2006. Had the screen completed, I think, in 2008. The screen is regular movie screen material cut into narrow louvers. There's 1,200 of them in a 21-foot screen, 7 foot high. The Cinerama camera was a single unit with 3 Mitchell cameras mounted on an aluminum frame, each one pointing in a different direction, 55 degrees apart. It went away because it was a presentation problem. Not every theater had 3 projectors and 7 speakers all around. It's a little bit of history. A lot of the Cineramas were travelogues. This was 1952, 1962. And this has all been captured on Cinerama. Excellent quality. They're very pleased. The reviews were excellent. The sales are great. So it turned out to be a real success. And they made essentially 7 movies.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
A Utah man spent 3 years planning to hike the West Coast Trail on Vancouver Island, only to have the airline lose his luggage and all his camping gear. But through Facebook and the help of some kind strangers, he was able to complete his adventure. He spoke with CBC's Gloria Makarenko about his struggles and ultimate triumph.
And that up there in the trees is the end of our trail. I am, I don't know, 1,000 feet away.
What enticed you to take on the West Coast Trail and plan for this hike in the first place?
I am an avid hiker, but I've always had just a lot of love for the Northwest. And several years ago, when I was looking at different hikes in the Northwest, the West Coast Trail just kept popping up. You're trying to amass the right kind of gear for those kind of conditions. Food, gear, physical training, getting airline tickets. Woohoo!
So, well, how did you do your research? Are there groups of people that you build off other people's experience?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a part of a Facebook group called the West Coast Trail.
Okay, so all this planning, you know what's going in the pack. You get to Victoria and...
Voila, no backpack.
Oh.
Nothing came off the baggage carousel. And then I kind of went through all the cycles of grief in about 15 minutes. And well, when I had posted that, information that I didn't get the bag, there was a huge outpouring. And one woman in particular, Valerie, was kind enough to reach out to Michael Anderson, and he came and he picked me up on Saturday morning.
This is the biggest beach on this hike by 300 times.
He outfitted me with the backpack, the tent, poles, sleeping bag, sleeping mattress, gaiters, rain gear, a stove. And then the second person that came up was Wayne Aiken. And he was kind enough then to pick me up in the afternoon and fill in the stuff that Mike didn't.
What an incredible experience.
How was the trek?
It was beyond what I could have imagined. Breathtaking wildlife and scenery.
Really grateful. A lot of people made this happen. So.
What about your original gear that somehow got lost on the way to Victoria? Did you ever get your gear back?
When I landed at 9:45 p.m. on Sunday night, that flight got my bag there 20 minutes later. I actually have it on video. And I think it was the universe just saying, I think you got a little too attached to your stuff and a little too precious, so we're gonna throw a little curveball to you. And it was actually a beautiful and really great thing.
Boy, I just got a lot of energy back. Just walking to the end of the trail now.
Thanks to all the amazing Canadians that have helped me and really taught me some beautiful lessons.
That's the Canadian way, a story that could have turned out horribly, ended so beautifully. I know the West Coast Trail is a really big deal for a lot of adventurers. I know that brings us also to the end of our show tonight. Thanks for being with us. Dan will be here tomorrow.